Haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Chof Aleph Amud Aleph, 6 lines from the top. We learned in our Mishnah that in regards to the first Avodah in the Mikdash, which is Trumas Hadeshen, throughout the entire year it was performed at Kriyas HaGever. When it comes to Yom Kippurim, it's done earlier at Chatzois, and yet during the Regalim, it's even earlier because of the great amount of people, and it's performed at the end of the first Ashmura, the first watch of the night. The Gemara now discusses a miracle that took place in regards to the amount, the great overflow of people that came on the Ole Regalim. Says the Gemara, Omar Rav Yehuda Marav, B'shasha Yisrael Oilin Laregel, Oimdim Tzefufim Mishtachavim Revochim. The time that the people came up on Ole Regalim, there were so many people that they stood, they couldn't even move. There was such a great amount of people there in the Azara. And as if they were standing upright like a beam. It was as if they were floating. They sometimes were not even on their feet on the ground. And yet when they bowed down, they were bowed down with revochim, with such an ample amount of space that there was 4 amos in between each person. Nobody can hear the vidui of his neighbor to embarrass him. Rav says, goes on to say, "V'nimshochin achas asrei amo acharei beis hakaporis," and there was such a great amount of people that the overflow of those that were in the Ezras Yisrael on the eastern part of the Azara, they had to then overflow to the north and south of the Azara, all the way to get to the west, the most western part of the Azara, behind the wall of the Kodesh Kadashim, in order to then find space. Ask the Gemara, my Ka'amar, if you told me there's ample space when they go ahead and bow down, so why do they have to overflow all the way to the west part of the Azara? Gemara answers, Hachi Ka'amar, this is what Rav meant to say. Afal pisha nimshochin achar esrei amo acharei beis hakapores v'oimdim tzefufin. Even though there was such a great amount of people that they overflowed all the way west till they get to the west side of the Azara, of those 11 amos behind the Kodesh HaKadoshim, Kishehein mishtachavim mishtachim revochim. Yet, when they came back to the eastern part where the Ezras Yisrael was, they were all able to then bow down towards the Mokom eastwards, Kodesh Kadoshim, and have ample space where nobody was going to be on top of the other one. Indeed, they had 4 amos between one and the next. Gemara comments, this is one of the 10 miracles that took place in the Beis HaMikdash. This is not like it says in the Mishnah Avos. There were 10 miracles that took place in the Beis HaMikdash, and they are as follows. Lo hipila isha mereach bosar haekdesh. A woman did not miscarry as a result of the delicious smelling aromas. Sometimes a woman who's pregnant can be endangered when she smells an aroma that is so tasty and she can't partake in it. There's a Mefarshim that speak out in the 8th parak later on that sometimes the ubar itself smells the aroma and has a desire, which also endangers the ubar as well as the mother. Akoponim, that never happened. There was never basar from the karbonos that became putrefied, even though it was sitting in the sun sometimes for hours. There wasn't a fly found in the Beis HaMitbachayim, even though there was intestines and blood and flesh and bosar that was located on the shulchanos in the Beis HaMitbachayim. Nonetheless, not a zvuv entered. The Kohen Gadol never saw Keri to poisel him as a result of seeing this tumah. V'lo nimtza psul ba'oimer ub'shtei halechem v'lechem haponim. And there was never a psul found in regards to the korban oimer, which is brought on the 16th of Nisan. That means to say, if indeed the harvest that was done on the night of the 16th, ultimately they couldn't bring the korban oimer, they found it to be pusul, they would not be able to then go ahead and have the grain, the barley, that was a flour, that was made into flour with enough time to bring it as a korban oimer. And that was never a psul, never found a psul. Shtei halechem, also never a psul was found. And that also would have been problematic because that had to be baked on Shavuos, right before Yom Tif. And therefore, if it was yes, a psul found. They couldn't doiche yanta by baking it. Uvelechem haponim. Similarly on lechem ponim, if they had a psul, they couldn't put the showbreads on the shulchan on Shabbos. Then it would have to go a whole week till the next Shabbos. So no psul was found, not in the oimer, not in the shtei alechem, and not in the lechem haponim. Oimdim tzefufim u'mishtachim revochim. As we explained before, there's such a great amount of people that was so crowded and overly crowded. Nonetheless, when they bowed down, they had enough space to bow down comfortably. No scorpion or snake caused harm to somebody in Yerushalayim. A person would never say, I have to stay one night in Yerushalayim. I'm uncomfortable. It's too tsar. It's too narrow. All of these were the 10 miracles that we found in the Beis HaMikdash. Ask the Gemara, Posach b'Mikdash v'siyam b'Yerushalayim. You began by saying there are 10 miracles in the Mikdash. The last 2 of the 10 were miracles that took place in Yerushalayim. Answers the Gemara, Iketarti achrei naisa b'Mikdash. There's another 2 miracles that took place in the Mikdash, being mashlim the 10. The Tanya says in the following Braisa, Me'olam loy kavu geshamim eish shel atzei hamarocha. Never did the rain turn off the fire that was on the marocha of the mizbeach. Ve'oshen hamarocha afilu kol harucha sheba'olam boos min shabbos bo'ei mazizos ois min mekoimoy. Despite the winds that were blowing, it never caused the smoke that was billowing from the mizbeach to then disperse in all places in the Azara. Rather, it stayed above the Mizbeach, and the air was clear around it. Ask the Gemara, V'su leka, there was only these 10 miracles that took place in the Mikdash. V'hatani, we have a Rabbi Shmaya Bekalneboy. We have a brayso that was taught by Rabbi Shmaya in the place of Kalneboy. Shivrei klei cheres nivloim b'mekoymon. The shivrei klei cheres, those klei cheres that were used for the cooking of the meat, so the juices of that meat entered into the walls of that klei cheres, whereby ultimately we become noisar and become pasul. Since a klei cheres can never be put into the mikvah and become tahor, they had to then break it there in the azara. So the mneis took place was that all of these shards were able to then become nivloin, become then seeped into the ground. The Omar Abaye, and Abaye said another nes, Mura v'noitzah v'dishon mizbeach hapnimi v'dishon hamenorah nivloim b'mekoymon. The innards and the feathers of the birds that were normally thrown outside on the side of the mizbeach, the ashes of the inner mizbeach where the ketoros is brought, and the ashes of the menorah, all of those things were put by the ground on the east part of the outer mizbeach, and they were also nivloim. So these are 2 additional miracles that we see in the Mikdash. Answers the Gemara, psulei tlasa havu. Those 3 that we mentioned, that there was never a psul, not in the korban oimer, not in the shtei halechem, and not in the lechem haponim, those really come to be 1. Chashbinu bechad, make it 1 miracle, that they never became pasul. Then apik trei ve'ayil trei, take out 2 of those 3, and then put in these 2 in its place. Now we have 10. Ask the Gemara, ihochi, if you're going to do that, then belui nami trei havu. Then this, what we just said now, are nivloin. Those are also 2 that are really 1 miracle. So therefore, we should put it as 1. Chashbinu bechad. In which case we do that, then chasru lehu. We'll be lacking 1 of the 10. We'll only have 9 miracles in our count of 10 miracles in the Mikdash. Answers the Gemara, ikanami achriti. There's an additional miracle that's mashlim the 10. Dom Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, neis gadol haya nase belechem aponim, sluku kisiduroi. There was a tremendous miracle that took place in regards to lechem aponim, that just as fresh as it was when it was put on the shulchan, that was the same freshness was when it was taken off the shulchan 1 week later. Shinamar says in the pasuk, "Lasum lechem choim biyoim hilok choy." The pasuk pshat in the pasuk is that take on that means plates on that day, hot or warm fresh breads. The day that's taken off, in other words, replace the older ones with the newer ones, with fresh, hot bread. The Rasha, however, we're saying is that the fresh, hot breads that were taken off were just as fresh as when they were put on. So that's in the 10th miracle. Ask the Gemara, but still, Vesuleka, there are no additional miracles in the Mikdash. V'amar Rabbi Levi, we have a Masorah tradition from our forefathers. Makom Aron Eino Min Amida. The place where the Aron HaKodesh was in the Kodesh HaKadoshim did not take any space. The Kodesh HaKadoshim was 20 amos by 20 amos, a square. And the place of the Aron inside, it says that there were 10 amos from each side of the Aron to the wall of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So it can't be that there was not a miracle because Aaron took up space. Elamai, we have a miracle. We have a tradition that did not take any space in the Kodesh Kadoshim. That's one miracle. V'amar Rabbonai, Amar Shmuel, an additional miracle. Kruvim b'neis hayoimdim. The kruvim that Shlomo Melech built, these wooden kruvim that were on either side of the north and the south side of the Aron HaKodesh. So those kruvim, they stood b'neis because the wings, they spread five amos, and from 5 amos, and therefore 5 amos to each side hit all the wall of the Makom Mikdash. When it was extended, it was then a complete 10 amos. From one end of the wing to the other wing, from one tip to the other tip, was a total of 20 amos. In other words, the wings themselves were 5. When it was extended, it was 10 altogether. And then from one wing span at one end to the other wing to the other end was a total of 20 amos. In other words, they both hit the walls of the Kodesh Kadoshim. So that would imply that the wings themselves extended from one end to the other end 20 amos. However, we have the kruvim themselves, the goof of the kruvim. So that must have taken up space. Elamai, there's a miracle that the goof of the kruvim were oimdim, it didn't take any space. So we have 2 additional miracles. The Gemara says, Nisei de broi kachashiv, nisei de gavoy loy kachashiv. Those miracles that are on the outside, those are miracles that we're counting as the 10 miracles in the Mikdash. The miracles that took place in the inside, where the Kruvim were located, and where the Aron itself was, with Kodesh Kadoshim, those are not included in our count. Ihochi asked the Gemara, Lechem HaPonim, Nami Nise Gavoihu. Avai, the Lechem HaPonim was in the Heichal, that was also inside, and that was one of the ones that we counted. Answered the Gemara, Lechem HaPonim Nise Debroihu. The nace of the Lechem HaPonim was indeed a nace that was on the outside. And the Gemara explains, Dom Reish Lakish, what's meant by the Posuk, Ala Shulchan HaTohor, that the Shulchan is Tor. Why is it calling the Shulchan being Tor? Tor Mechlal Shu Tomei. It's mashma that it's called Tohor because that it could become Tomei. So Gemara asks, on Daf Chof Aleph Amud Beis at the top, Kli Eitz ha'esui lenachasu, a Kli Eitz that is made just to stay stationary. V'kol Kli Eitz ha'esui lenachas eino mekabel tuma v'chayitz b'fnei tuma. Since the shulchan was stationary, so therefore it's not something that's mekabel tuma, and therefore since it's not mekabel tuma, it also is something that's going to be chayitz b'fnei tuma. So why over here does it say that the lechem haponim are going to be put on a shulchan that is tohor? The shulchan anyways is tohor. What's the extra dogesh on the shulchan being tohor? Is mashma that it's tamei. It could become tamei. Answers the Gemara, Ela melamed shemagbin oiser lo oile regalim. In fact, it wasn't stationary. The shulchan was picked up and brought outside to show the ole regalim. They would show them the bread. They would say to them, Ru'u chibaschem lifnei hamokim. Look at how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu cherishes you. Shesiluko kisiduroi. That the taking off of the shulchan, that means the bread, is as fresh as it is when it is put back, when it's put the new breads on. Shneimar says in the Pasuk, Losum lechem choim biyom chilko. So you see over here that the nace that took place in regards to the lechem haponim was considered to be a nace that was on the outside, and therefore that's mashlim of the 10 nace that took place in the Mikdash.